went on with her story. "The doctor was with us in an incredibly short time. The groom had met him letting himself into his house with his latchkey, and he came here running. He made a proper tourniquet for poor Father's arm, and then went home to get some appliances. I dare say he will be back almost immediately. Then a policeman came, and sent a message to the station, and very soon the superintendent was here. Then you came." There was a long pause, and I ventured to take her hand for an instant. Without a word more we opened the door and joined the superintendent in the hall. He hurried up to us, saying as he came: "I have been examining everything myself, and have sent off a message to Scotland Yard. You see, Mr. Ross, there seemed so much that was odd about the case, that I thought we had better have the best man of the Criminal Investigation Department that we could get. So I sent a note asking to have Sergeant Daw sent at once. You remember him, sir, in that American poisoning case at Hoxton?" "Oh, yes," I said, "I remember him well. In that and other cases, for I have benefited several times by his skill and acumen. He has a mind that works as truly as any that I know. When I have been for the defense and believed my man was innocent, I was glad to have him against us." "That is high praise, sir," said the superintendent, gratified. "I am glad you approve of my choice; that I did well in sending for him." I answered heartily: "Could not be better. I do not doubt that between you we shall get at the facts, and what lies behind them." We ascended to Mr. Trelawny's room, where we found everything exactly as his daughter had described. There came a ring at the house bell, and a minute later a man was shown into the room. A young man with aquiline features, keen grey eyes, and a forehead that stood out square and broad as that of a thinker. In his hand he had a black bag which he at once opened. Miss Trelawny introduced us: "Doctor Winchester, Mr. Ross, Superintendent Dolan." We bowed mutually, and he, without a moment's delay, began his work. We all waited, and eagerly watched him as he proceeded to dress the wound. As he went on, he turned now and again to call the Superintendent's attention to some point about the wound, the latter proceeding to enter the fact at once in his notebook. "See! Several parallel cuts or scratches beginning on the left side of the wrist and in some places endangering the radial artery. These small wounds here, deep and jagged, seem as if made with a blunt instrument. This in particular would seem as if made with some kind of sharp wedge. The flesh round it seems torn as if with lateral pressure." Turning to Miss Trelawny, he said presently: "Do you think we might remove this bangle? It is not absolutely necessary, as it will fall lower on the wrist where it can hang loosely, but it might add to the patient's comfort later on." The poor girl flushed deeply as she answered in a low voice: "I do not know. I have only recently come to live with my father, and I know so little of his life or his ideas that I fear I can hardly judge in such a matter." The doctor, after a keen glance at her, said in a very kindly way: "Forgive me, I did not know; but in any case you need not be distressed. It is not required at present to move it. Were it so, I should do so at once on my own responsibility. If it be necessary later on, we can easily remove it with a file. Your father doubtless has some object in keeping it as it is. See, this is a tiny key attached to it." As he was speaking he stopped and bent lower, taking from my hand the candle which I held and lowering it till its light fell on the bangle. Then, motioning me to hold the candle in the same position, he took from his pocket a magnifying glass which he adjusted. When he had made a careful examination, he stood up and handed the magnifying glass to Dolan, saying as he did so: "You had better examine it yourself. That is no ordinary bangle. The gold is wrought over triple steel links. See where it is worn away. It is manifestly not meant to be removed lightly, and it would need more than an ordinary file to do it." The Superintendent bent his great body, but not getting close enough that way, knelt down by the sofa as the Doctor had done. He examined the bangle minutely, turning it slowly around so that no particle of it escaped observation. Then he stood up and handed the magnifying glass to me. "When you have examined it yourself," he said, "let the lady look at it if she will." And he commenced to write at length in his notebook. I made a simple alteration in his suggestion. I held out the glass toward Miss Trelawny, saying: "Had you not better examine it first?" She drew back, slightly raising her hand in disclaimer, as she said impulsively: "Oh, no! Father would doubtless have shown it to me had he wished me to see it. I would not like to without his consent." Then she added, doubtless fearing lest her delicacy of view should give offense to the rest of us: "Of course it is right that you should see it. You have to examine and consider everything; and indeed I am grateful to you." She turned away. I could see that she was crying quietly. It was evident to me that even in the midst of her trouble and anxiety there was a chagrin that she knew so little of her father, and that her ignorance had to be shown at such a time and amongst so many strangers. That they were all men did not make the shame more easy to bear, though there was a certain relief in it. Trying to interpret her feelings, I could not but think that she must have been glad that no woman's eyes, of understanding greater than man's, were upon her in that hour. When I stood up from my examination, which verified to me that of the Doctor, the latter resumed his place beside the couch and went on with his ministrations. Superintendent Dolan said to me in a whisper: "I think we are fortunate in our Doctor." I nodded, and was about to add something in praise of his acumen, when there came a low tapping at the door. End of Chapter 1. Recording by Roger Moline.